The night was heavy with stillness, the kind of silence that pressed against Claire's chest. She sat by the bedroom window, staring out at the faint glow of street lamps. To anyone else, her life with Michael looked flawless. The grand house, the successful husband, the smiles they wore at dinner parties. But inside these walls, silence had become its own kind of language, cold, sharp, and suffocating. Michael lay in bed, the covers drawn neatly over him, his breathing even. Claire envied his ease, his ability to close his eyes and drift into sleep as though nothing weighed on him. She traced her wedding band with her thumb, remembering the vows spoken years ago, promises of loyalty and love. But what lingered now between them wasn't love. It was distance widening with every unspoken word. "Are you going to keep sitting there all night?" Michael's voice broke the stillness, smooth but edged. Claire turned, startled. "I thought you were asleep." "I was," he said, shifting onto his side. "But it's hard to sleep when you're pacing the room like a ghost." Her lips tightened. "I wasn't pacing. I was thinking." He gave a faint laugh, though it lacked warmth. "You think too much. It makes you restless. She hated the way he said it, as though her unease was a flaw, as though he wasn't the source of it. "I just want us to talk, Michael," she whispered. "Really talk. Not the polite version we give the world. Us." His gaze met hers across the dim room, cool and unwavering. "There's nothing to talk about." "You invent problems that don't exist. If you keep looking for cracks, you'll break what we have." Her chest ached at the dismissal. Once again, her words had been twisted, diminished, silenced. She turned back to the window, her reflection faint in the glass. A woman trapped between loyalty and doubt stared back at her. The night stretched on, thick with the weight of unsaid truths. Claire knew she would lie awake until dawn, caught in the quiet war between what she wanted to believe about her husband and what her instincts whispered in the dark, and those whispers were only growing louder. Morning light poured into the kitchen, warm and golden, but it did nothing to thaw the chill between them. Michael moved with practiced ease, pouring coffee, reading headlines, offering the occasional affectionate smile. To anyone else, he was the picture of a devoted husband. Claire knew better. Later that day, they attended a charity luncheon. Michael charmed everyone, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, leaning toward her with an arm casually draped across her chair. "My wife is the real heart of this family," he declared to their neighbors, earning admiring glances in her direction. Claire forced a smile, the kind that looked perfect in photographs but felt hollow in her bones. On the drive home, silence hung heavy until Michael broke it. "You were quiet today. People noticed." "I wasn't quiet," Claire replied carefully. "I just didn't have much to say." Michael chuckled, but the sound was sharp. "You're too sensitive. It's like you imagine slights where there are none. People will think something's wrong with you." Her fingers tightened around the seatbelt. "Something wrong with you." The words cut deeper than he realized, or maybe he knew exactly what he was doing. At home, the pattern continued. She reached for her notebook, where she sometimes wrote down her thoughts, but he frowned. "Journals make you brood. That's why you get these moods." Claire lowered the pen slowly. He was rewriting her reality, piece by piece, until she doubted the ground beneath her feet. She replayed their conversation from the night before, the dismissal of her worries, the warning not to look for cracks. Now he was widening those cracks, forcing her to question whether they were even real. In the evenings, he was all gentleness again, touching her shoulder, pouring her wine, brushing kisses against her temple. The contrast was dizzying. Tender husband in public, manipulative judge in private. And every time she tried to speak, he made her feel smaller, unstable, fragile. By the end of the week, Claire stood at the window once more, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The glass reflected her face back at her, pale and weary. For the first time, she whispered aloud, "Am I losing myself?" Downstairs, Michael's voice called, smooth and affectionate. "Claire, dinner's ready." She closed her eyes, swallowing hard. The mask he wore for the world was flawless. But inside these walls, the foundation of their marriage was beginning to crack, and she knew those cracks would soon reveal something darker. Claire noticed the shift first in small ways. Michael's late nights at the office became more frequent, his excuses polished yet hollow. The more charming he appeared in public, the more distant he felt at home. One evening after dinner, he grabbed his coat and kissed her cheek with that effortless smile. "Late meeting," he said. "Don't wait up." Something in his voice set her nerves alight. She waited 10 minutes before slipping out the door, heart hammering as she climbed into her car. Headlights low, she followed him through winding streets until the city gave way to darker, emptier roads. Michael's car finally slowed near an abandoned strip of warehouses, their windows black, walls streaked with graffiti. He parked in a shadowed corner. Claire eased her car to a stop several spaces back, every instinct screaming at her to leave. But her hands stayed locked on the wheel. A figure emerged from the darkness, a woman. Mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back, a coat clutched tightly around her frame. She moved toward Michael with an air of familiarity that sliced through Claire's chest. Michael stepped out of his car, his posture tense yet steady. Claire held her breath as they spoke, their voices muffled by the distance. The woman gestured sharply and Michael leaned closer. Then something passed between them, a small envelope. The woman clutched it, her face unreadable, while Michael's jaw tightened as though swallowing anger. It wasn't the intimacy of lovers, Claire realized with a jolt. It was something colder, business, transactional. Still, the sight twisted her gut. She ducked lower in her seat when Michael glanced around the lot, his eyes sweeping dangerously close to where she sat. For a long moment, she was sure he had seen her. But then he turned back, his voice low, his body rigid. The woman stepped back, shaking her head, before disappearing into the shadows. Michael lingered, staring at the envelope in his hand, then slid back into his car. Claire remained frozen as his taillights vanished into the night. Her hands trembled against the steering wheel, her breath shallow. Fear prickled her skin, sharp and invasive. This wasn't an affair. It was something worse, something she couldn't yet name. When she finally returned home, Michael was already there, leaning casually in the kitchen doorway, a glass of wine in hand. "You're late," he said smoothly, as if he had been waiting. Claire forced a laugh. "I stopped for groceries." His smile lingered too long, eyes unreadable. As she brushed past him, her heart pounded with a single, relentless truth. She wasn't just doubting her marriage anymore. She was afraid of it, and fear, once planted, only grew deeper roots. The image of Michael in that deserted parking lot haunted Claire long after the night had ended. Every time she looked at him across the breakfast table, she saw his shadowed figure beneath the streetlight, envelope in hand. The unease gnawed at her, feeding on doubt, until finally she began searching for answers where she had never dared before. His past. Michael had always been vague about his younger years. He spoke in fragments, a small-town childhood, parents gone too soon, a brother he didn't keep in touch with. Whenever Claire asked for more, he would smile and steer the conversation elsewhere. At first, she had mistaken his reticence for pain. Now, it felt like evasion. One afternoon, while Michael was at work, Claire found herself in the attic, the air thick with dust and old wood. Boxes lined the walls, many labeled neatly in his handwriting. Taxes, receipts, winter clothes. She almost gave up, until her eyes landed on one box shoved behind the others, unmarked and heavier than the rest. Inside lay a jumble of relics, faded photographs, scraps of paper, and a cracked leather journal. Claire sifted through them with trembling hands until a single photo stopped her cold. It was Michael, years younger, leaner, but unmistakably him, and beside him stood the woman from the warehouse lot, her smile wide, her arm hooked casually around his shoulders. Claire's breath caught. The caption scrawled on the back in messy ink read, "Michael and Lila, 2004 Lila." The woman had a name now. She turned the journal's brittle pages, finding fragments of writing, entries about nights spent with Lila, promises exchanged, arguments hinted at. One line in particular made her chest tighten. "She knows too much. If this falls apart, so will everything." Claire shoved the journal back, her hands shaking. The air in the attic felt thinner, the walls pressing closer. The woman Michael had met wasn't a stranger, wasn't some passing acquaintance. She was part of his past, woven deep into the fabric he had hidden from her. When Michael returned home that evening, smiling, jacket slung over his shoulder, Claire struggled to meet his gaze. His mask of charm was intact, But now she knew what lay behind it, and she realized something chilling. If Lila's reappearance had unsettled him enough to meet in secret, then the danger wasn't just in his past, it was already bleeding into their present. Claire waited until after dinner. When the house was quiet and Michael's mood seemed lighter, she could feel her pulse in her throat as she set her wine glass down, her fingers trembling slightly against the stem. "Michael," she began carefully, "who is Lila?" The change in him was instant. His smile faltered, though only for a second. Then he leaned back, chuckling softly as though she had told a joke. "Lila, where did you come up with that?" "I found a photo," Claire said, her voice tightening. "In the attic. You and her together. And I saw you with her the other night." He tilted his head, studying her with a gaze that felt like a blade. "Claire, you realize how that sounds? You've been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe you're remembering wrong." Her breath caught. "I'm not remembering wrong. I saw you." Michael leaned forward, lowering his voice to a calm, patronizing whisper. "Darling, you've always had a vivid imagination. It's one of the things I love about you. But sometimes that imagination runs away and convinces you of things that aren't there." The words pressed down on her, heavy, suffocating. For a moment she almost doubted herself. "Almost. You're twisting this," she said quietly. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "I'm protecting you from yourself. If you keep inventing stories, people will think you're unstable. Is that what you want?" Her throat burned, her chest tight with frustration. She pulled her hand back, standing abruptly from the table. Michael only sighed, sipping his wine with practiced calm. That night, while he slept peacefully, Claire sat in the dim glow of the kitchen, the recorder small and cold in her hand. She slid it carefully into the drawer beneath the cutlery, his morning ritual spot. Another went beneath the couch cushions in the living room. If he wanted to erase her reality, she would preserve it. Word for word, tone for tone, every lie and every manipulation. As she crept back upstairs, she paused at the bedroom door. Michael stirred in his sleep, murmuring something inaudible. His face, softened in rest, looked almost innocent. But Claire knew better. The cage he built around her was growing tighter with each word he twisted, each doubt he planted. And soon, she feared, that cage would close completely, unless she found a way to break it first. The living room glowed faintly with the blue light of the television, casting restless shadows across the walls. Claire sat on the edge of the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, absently twisting her wedding band. Michael reclined beside her, calm as ever, eyes half on the news, half on his phone. The anchor's voice cut through the room with sharp finality. "Breaking news tonight. A body has been recovered from the East River. Authorities confirm the victim is a woman in her mid-30s. Investigators are seeking information regarding her last known companion." Claire's head snapped up. The screen shifted to a grainy still, security footage from a bar entrance, the victim's blurred figure alongside the suggestion of a man. Then, moments later, a police sketch appeared. Her blood froze. The jawline, the eyes, the set of the mouth. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to send her stomach into a violent twist. The man in the sketch looked like Michael. She stole a glance at him, heart hammering. He didn't flinch. His thumb scrolled across his phone lazily, as though the news held no interest. "Did you hear that?" she asked, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Hear what?" His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to his phone. The body. The police sketch. Michael shrugged, sipping his wine. "People die every day, Claire. Tragic, yes, but hardly unusual. And sketches? They always look like someone you know." His casual tone scraped against her nerves. Too calm, too rehearsed. The anchor continued, describing how the woman had last been seen leaving the bar with a man, matching the sketch. Claire barely heard the words. The roaring in her ears drowned them out. Her mind replayed the night in the warehouse lot. Michael's hand gripping that envelope, the woman's sharp gestures. Lila. Her chest constricted. Lila wasn't just alive in Michael's past. She was the victim in the river. She pressed her hands together to keep them from shaking. If he noticed, she was finished. Michael finally set his phone down, leaning back against the couch with a faint smile. "You worry too much. I swear one day your imagination will be the death of you." The words slid into her like ice. Later, As he turned off the lights and climbed the stairs, Claire remained frozen in the dark, her eyes fixed on the silent screen. The sketch lingered in her mind, etched into her memory. The cracks in her marriage were no longer invisible. They were gaping wounds, bleeding into something darker, and for the first time, she knew, if she didn't act soon, Michael's secrets would consume them both. The sketch on the news replayed in Claire's mind like a wound she couldn't close. She waited until Michael left for work, before dialing the precinct number she had memorized the night before. Her hand shook as she gave her name, her voice trembling as she asked to speak with the detective handling the East River case. Detective Morgan's voice was firm, professional, edged with exhaustion. "This is Morgan. What can I do for you, Mrs. Hale?" Claire swallowed hard. "It's about the man in that sketch. I think it might be my husband." Silence stretched on the line. Then, "You'd better come in." At the station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their cold glow making her nerves worse. Morgan studied her across the desk, pen tapping lightly against his notepad. He was older than she expected, with lines carved deep around his eyes, the look of a man who had seen too much. "Tell me everything," he said. Claire told him about the late nights, the parking lot, the envelope, the photo she'd found in the attic. She spoke quickly at first, then slower as the weight of her own words pressed down on her. Morgan didn't interrupt, only scribbled notes, his face unreadable. When she finally stopped, he leaned back. "Mrs. Hale, do you have proof? Hard evidence? Because right now what you've got are suspicions. Strong ones maybe, but still just suspicions." Her throat tightened. "I'm recording him. I've hidden devices. If he slips, if he says something, I'll have it." Morgan's eyes narrowed. He lowered his voice. "Then listen to me carefully. If what you're saying is true, you're not just living with a liar. You're living with a dangerous man, and if he even suspects you're onto him." He paused, his gaze locking on hers. "Then you're in grave danger." The words chilled her more than the river ever could. He slid his card across the desk. "Call me the moment you have something concrete. But be careful, very careful. Don't confront him again. Don't let him know you've spoken to me. You understand?" Claire nodded, her fingers closing around the card. Her heart pounded as she left the station, Morgan's warning echoing in her mind. When she returned home that night, Michael was waiting in the kitchen, smiling as though nothing had changed. But as his eyes lingered on her a second too long, Claire knew he sensed it. Something in her had shifted. And now, the walls of her marriage were no longer just cracking. They were closing in. Claire felt Detective Morgan's warning echo with every breath she took. If he suspects you, you're in danger. And Michael suspected. She could see it in the way his eyes lingered too long, in the sudden precision with which he tracked her movements. It began with questions, casual at first. "Where were you this morning?" he asked as she returned from the market. "I told you, groceries," Claire replied, keeping her tone light. "Funny," he said, his smile too sharp. "I checked the fridge. Didn't see much new in there." Her stomach dropped. He was testing her. Soon his presence multiplied. He appeared at her volunteer meetings without warning, greeting her friends with warmth while his gaze burned into her. Once she ducked into a cafe for a moment of solitude, only to find him there minutes later, sliding into the chair across from her. Coincidence, he claimed, but the edge in his smile told another story. At home, the air thickened. He hovered in doorways, watching her fold laundry, watching her cook, watching her write. When she excused herself to the bathroom, he sometimes knocked after a few minutes, asking if she was all right. His concern, once endearing, now felt like surveillance. The house became a cage. The walls that once offered comfort now pressed inward, suffocating her. Claire began timing her movements carefully, hiding her recorders with increasing caution. Yet every step felt perilous, every slip of the tongue a potential trigger. One night she reached for the drawer where she'd hidden the first device, her heart pounding. As her fingers brushed the handle, Michael's voice cut through the silence. "Looking for something?" She froze. He stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "A spoon," she managed, forcing her lips into a faint smile. After a long pause, he stepped aside. "Of course. A spoon." Her knees threatened to buckle as she carried the utensil away, her mind screaming. He knew, or at least he suspected. Upstairs, she pressed her back to the bathroom door, her reflection in the mirror pale and wide-eyed. Morgan had been right. The danger wasn't abstract anymore. It was alive, inside her home, tightening its grip. And if she didn't uncover the truth soon, the walls wouldn't just close in. They would crush her. Claire's fear sharpened into resolve. If the walls of her home were closing in, then she needed something undeniable. Evidence that could tear Michael's mask away. The chance came late one night when Michael left abruptly after a phone call, muttering about a client emergency. Claire waited until the sound of his car faded, then slipped into his study. The room smelled faintly of his cologne and cigar smoke, his world of polished surfaces and locked drawers. She knelt by the bottom cabinet, the one he never allowed her to touch. The lock was old, its key long misplaced, but she had prepared. With trembling hands, she used a thin hairpin, her heart pounding as the mechanism clicked open. Inside lay a stack of files bound with twine. She pulled one free, spreading its contents across the desk under the glow of a single lamp. The first page stole her breath. A photograph of Lila smiling, alive. Beneath it were receipts, phone records, and letters. One letter in particular made her blood run cold. "Michael, you can't keep running. I know what you did. If you don't make this right, I'll tell everything." Claire's fingers trembled as she turned the pages. There were old police reports from years ago, assault charges that had been dismissed, witness statements that never went to trial. Lila's name appeared more than once, tied to each incident like a shadow tethered to Michael's past. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't an affair. It was a history, a violent one. She found another photo, this one more recent, grainy, taken outside a bar. Michael and Lila together, their faces tense. The date scrawled in the corner matched the night she had followed him. Tears burned her eyes. Lila hadn't been some ghost from Michael's youth. She had been real, alive, trying to expose him. And now she was dead. Claire stuffed the documents back into the drawer, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the files. As she relocked the cabinet, headlights swept across the window. Her pulse surged. Michael was home. She scrambled upstairs, diving beneath the covers just as the front door opened. Seconds later, Michael stepped into the bedroom, loosening his tie, his expression calm. "You're still awake?" he asked, his voice smooth. "Couldn't sleep," she whispered, forcing herself not to look away. He studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly before turning off the light. But as he lay beside her, Claire's mind screamed with the truth. She now had proof. Proof of his violent history, proof of his link to Lila. Proof that the man beside her wasn't just hiding secrets. He was burying them, and with that knowledge came a chilling certainty. Sooner or later, she would have to confront him. The storm rolled in without warning, thunder cracking across the night sky. Claire sat at the kitchen table, her hands clenched around a cup of untouched tea. When the power went out, the house plunged into darkness, save for the flicker of a single candle she had lit. The shadows danced against the walls like restless spirits. Michael entered moments later, his footsteps steady, his face calm in the glow. "Well," he murmured, "looks like we're in for a long night." Claire's pulse raced. She had waited for this. An opportunity without the distraction of glowing screens, without escape routes. The recorder was hidden beneath the table, its tiny light shielded by her folded napkin. She forced her voice to remain steady. "Michael," she began, "I know about Lila." His head turned sharply. The faint smile that had lingered on his lips faded. "What about her?" "I found the files. The letters. The photos." Her voice trembled, but she pressed on. "She wasn't just some ghost from your past. She was part of your life, up until the night she died." Silence pressed against the room, broken only by the wind howling outside. Michael lowered himself into the chair across from her, the candlelight sharpening the hollows of his face. "You shouldn't have gone through my things," he said quietly. Claire leaned forward, her breath shallow. "You killed her, didn't you?" For the first time, Michael didn't deny. He didn't twist, didn't laugh. He simply stared at her, his eyes dark, his jaw tightening. "She was going to destroy us," he said finally, his voice low, each word deliberate. "She knew things about me, things I thought were buried. She threatened to go to the police, to drag my name through the mud. And if that happened, Claire, you would have lost everything too. Her throat tightened. So you silenced her. I protected us, he snapped, his calm slipping. Then softer, pleading, everything I've done I did for you. For us, don't you see? Our marriage, our life. It wouldn't exist if I hadn't stopped her. Claire's hands shook beneath the table, but she kept them hidden. The recorder captured every word, each syllable of the mask finally crumbling. You manipulated me, she whispered. Gaslit me. Made me doubt my own mind. All to keep your secrets. Michael's gaze softened, but it was the softness of a predator lowering its voice, not its claws. Because I needed you, Claire. I couldn't let you see me for what I am. If you had, you would have left me. And I couldn't allow that. The candle flickered violently, shadows stretching across his face like cracks in a mask. For the first time, Claire realized the balance of power had shifted. She wasn't the only one exposed. Now, she held his confession, and what she chose to do with it would decide whether she lived in silence or ended their marriage in ruin. Claire sat alone in the dim glow of the kitchen, the recorder on the table before her like a loaded weapon. Michael's voice played back in chilling clarity, each word a nail in the coffin of their marriage. She had what she needed, proof undeniable, evidence that could end him. But ending him meant ending everything. Her mind whirled with possibilities. She could take the recording to Detective Morgan, hand it over, and watch as Michael's world collapsed. She would be free, at least in law's eyes, yet freedom came with a cost. Reporters would descend, neighbors would gossip, and Claire would forever be branded not just as the victim of a criminal husband, but as the woman who had shared his bed while he killed. The other option pressed just as hard. She could erase the recording, bury it along with the truth, continue playing the devoted wife while knowing she lived beside a murderer. Silence would preserve the illusion. Dinners with friends, photographs at parties, the appearance of a life untouched. But silence was its own kind of prison, one that would rot her from the inside. Her reflection in the dark window looked hollow, fractured. She whispered to it, barely audible. Justice or survival? Which one will destroy me less? From upstairs came the faint creak of the floorboards. Michael moving, perhaps restless, perhaps listening. Her hand flew to the recorder, slipping it into her pocket as if to shield it. The sound of his presence in the house just above her head made the decision feel more urgent. She thought of Lila's face in the photographs, of the letters that threatened to expose Michael, of the way he had twisted her mind with gaslight until she doubted her own sanity. The weight of betrayal pressed so heavily she could hardly breathe. And yet, when she pictured Michael in handcuffs, his eyes burning with rage as they dragged him away, another image rose to meet it. Her own face reflected in every headline, every whisper. She would never escape his shadow, even if he was locked away. Claire pressed the recorder tighter in her hand. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow she would decide. But deep inside she knew delaying the choice was dangerous, because Michael was already watching her more closely than ever. And if he found out what she carried, there would be no choice left at all. Morning light crept reluctantly through the curtains, but the house remained heavy with tension. Claire sat at the dining table, the recorder still tucked safely in her pocket. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Michael's confession echoing in the dark. Every time she opened them, she saw his shadow moving above her, closer, more watchful. Michael entered the room in crisp silence, coffee in hand, his expression calm as ever. He studied her for a long moment before finally speaking. Rough night? Her throat tightened. Yes. He leaned against the counter, casual but coiled. I've been thinking. You've been different. Hiding things. Claire forced herself to meet his gaze. We both have. The faint smile that spread across his lips was terrifying in its familiarity. And what secrets are you hiding, Claire? She froze. He was baiting her, pressing for cracks, but something inside her snapped. She placed the recorder on the table and pressed play. His own voice filled the room, calm, deliberate, damning. His mask faltered just for an instant as he reached across the table to stop it. But she pulled it back. It's over, Michael. I know what you did to Lila. I know everything. The silence that followed was suffocating. His eyes darkened, his voice low. You think you've trapped me, but you've forgotten something. Her hands shook. What's that? He leaned closer, his words sharp as glass. Secrets cut both ways. Claire's heart pounded. For years she had buried her past, locked it away as if it belonged to another woman. But Michael knew, or at least suspected. She saw it in his eyes. Long before Michael, there had been another man, another betrayal, another night by the water where things had gone too far. A desperate shove, a splash, silence that followed her into marriage like a ghost she never spoke of. Michael's smile grew as her face drained of color. "You're not so innocent, are you? You think I never noticed the way you flinched when we drove by the lake, the way you avoided his name? I chose you because I knew, because you were just like me." Her breath caught, shame and fury colliding in her chest. The recorder still blinked in her hand, but suddenly it felt useless. A weapon that cut her as deeply as it did him. The truth bound them now, not love. Two killers seated across from each other, each with the power to destroy the other. Their marriage, once built on vows, was cemented now in silence and ruin. Claire turned off the recorder, slipping it into her pocket. "Then we're finished, Michael." He didn't argue. He only smiled, the kind of smile that promised neither of them would ever truly be free. And in the hollow quiet of that morning, Claire understood. Betrayal was not just his sin. It was theirs.